Farmers today are facing rising costs, volatile markets, and extreme weather. The Better Way to Farm podcast digs into strategies to help you take control of farm inputs and maximize profit so your farm can thrive for generations. Remember to take advantage of our free resources at abetterwaytofarm.com. Now, from America's Heartland, here's your host.
Hello, this is Rod at A Better Way to Farm, where we improve yields and increase profits. And guys, we are excited about our episode today. I want to just kind of run through a plethora of things. I've had a very interesting week, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have those as people call and they share interesting stories with you and different things are brought to light. And I've been flipping through the farm magazines, and of course, as they should be, they're all about cutting cost and saving money. I do get a little bit confused when on the one page it's telling me how to save money on fertilizer, and on the other page it's telling me how it is that I can pay more money for cash rent. And I think that cash rent is probably worthy of some consideration, guys, and I'm not going to make that decision for you, but we need to be realistic in those numbers that we can actually pay here, and I don't think we want to be banking on corn going to $6 in 2026. I want to open with a story. A good friend of mine, Greg, called last week, and it took me a little bit to process it. The story was so far out of bounds, and I talked to him about it, and he says it is absolutely the truth. And so here we go. Let me have story time with you guys. The neighbor of Greg's had came over, and he was going to one of the local retailers to say, hey, how do we know if it's okay to be putting on anhydrous? How do we know if it's sealing well enough? And this is the story that my friend shared with me that his neighbor said. The way it went down was they said, all right, well, here's what you do. You and your son, you go out to the field, one of you get in the rig and you start pulling the anhydrous on, and the other one walk behind and inhale really deeply. And if it burns your lungs, it's not sealing right and you need to quit. Long pause, guys. I don't know. I mean, I guess that I have a good friend here locally, and he has always told me that you never know if your liability insurance is any good until you file a claim. That seems like a great way to see if my liability insurance is any good. And guys, it opens up so many things as to why I am not a fan of anhydrous. And I'm going to get to this idea of how we're going to save money in 26 and maybe talk about some things that we think are good ideas and some of the things that we're reading that we do not think is a good idea at all. And I can tell you that this is not a good idea. Number one on the list of not good ideas is to ascertain whether or not it's okay to apply anhydrous by walking behind it and inhaling deeply. Guys, permanent lung damage is not anything that somebody should wake up in the morning and say, that's what I want to do. And the fact of the matter is, inhaling anhydrous is a really bad idea for those who may not actually know that. I'm going to go on the record and say, don't do it. We are not fans of anhydrous for a lot of reasons. We don't like fall-applied nitrogen because we know this is not something that you can debate. We suffer more loss with fall-applied anhydrous, and that has been proven over and over again. The Illinois Soybean Board has commissioned a study that proved that unequivocally, and so we are not a fan of that. People do it, and that's okay. We have clients, and that's what they do, but we need to have our eyes wide open, unless we're out in the field with the anhydrous. That's just a joke. But we need to have our eyes wide open and know that we're going to suffer loss, and we've got some things to work through there. But guys, for someone in the industry to tell you that the way to check is to go out there and inhale deeply and take a risk on damaging your lungs was mind-boggling to me. I absolutely just was blown away. So let's talk about some of the things that we're seeing on how to save money as we launch off into 2026. And we're seeing a lot of ways to do that are there. We are reading more and more and more. People are talking about soil testing. I am astounded at the number of people that we talk to. We haven't soil tested for 10 years. We haven't soil tested for 12 years. And they wear that like a badge of honor. Guys, the number one thing we need to do is soil test so we can see where we are. Maybe our levels have went up significantly and we don't need to apply as much. Maybe they've went down and we're really getting hammered on yield because we're not paying any attention. But that soil test is the number one thing to start saving money. And then we've got to say, okay, now what are we going to do? One of the things that I've read in multiple magazines is that if we're going to do fall applied anhydrous, we should be looking at a good inhibitor. That is absolutely true. We should reduce our nitrogen rate by the cost of the inhibitor. And if the inhibitor is a good one, and there are 3 that work, we would be able to make money because the inhibitor plus the nitrogen would equal the price of too much nitrogen going on, and it will get you a yield decrease next year. One of the things that I keep hearing them say is they talk about the fact that you should postpone major P and K applications except for where you're really low. That is true. And we would want to pay attention here, guys. If our levels are in the high range, it's probably a good time to say, yeah, I don't want no $900 a ton DAP. I don't want no $500 or $600 a ton potash. I want to do the right thing. And then the other thing that we're seeing catch fire is they're talking about replacing dry with row place starter. And I'm actually seeing magazines say, hey, did you know you're going to get more bang for your buck if you row place the nutrients? Thank you. Welcome to the party 30 years late. The fact of the matter is we have always known that placement is key, that when we place those nutrients, they get into that plant. One of the things that I keep seeing that is very troublesome to me is they just keep saying to postpone lime. Don't put on any lime this year. Don't put on any lime this year. Take that money and buy P and K. I got a great idea. Take the P and K money and put on the lime and let the P and K that's in your soil that will become more available when you get your pH where it needs to be. And let's use that phosphorus and that potassium that's already there. Guys, to me, $1 is calcium management. Getting that pH at least above 6.2, and we would like to see it 6.5 to 6.8. But if you're farming something with a 5.6, a 5.8, a 5.9 pH, you're wasting fertilizer dollars because that is unavailable. Look at that availability chart based on pH and quickly understand why it is that lime is the first dollar spent. Guys, we're going to be doing a whole series of our fundamentals of agronomy. As a matter of fact, as I talk to you today, the first one's taking place down in Mississippi. And there's a bunch of people in that room with ink pens taking notes, figuring out how it is that they can be profitable in 2026. But one of the things that I can assure you that those guys are talking about is pH management, is calcium management, making sure that we have that right because everything else works around it. Do I think that calcium is the only nutrient? No. Do I see people out here saying, oh, just apply a bunch of calcium in the furrow, foliar feed a bunch of calcium, don't worry about anything else? Absolutely not. Guys, I like steak, but if all I eat is steak, somewhere down the road, I'm not going to be very healthy. Plants like calcium, but if the only thing you feed them is calcium, then that's going to come back and not give us the yield potential that we deserve. Do we want to manage that pH? Yes. Do we want to manage that calcium? Yes, we do. Is it the only thing? Absolutely not. So once we get that pH right, get that calcium right, and then we've already got that soil test to say, here's what we truly need for the realistic yield goal that we have in order to make this thing work. And when we look at what we truly need, I just went through a bunch of soil tests today for a friend of ours up in Minnesota, and we were taking a look, and his soil test, he had fields that needed 0 manganese, and he had fields that needed 6 pints of manganese. We manage that on a field-by-field basis. Why? Because if what you truly want to do is target your fertilizer funds, you've got a limited budget, and we all do, and we want to target those and make sure we're getting the most bang for our buck, why would we try and treat every field the same? That makes no sense. We don't treat them all the same. We give them what they need. We do a checkup with the soil test. We see what they need. We write the prescription in order to get the results that we want. Over-applying P and K is an abject waste of money. Over-applying nitrogen, abject waste of money. And guys, I'm seeing more and more stuff in the media. Here in the state of Iowa, we've got an individual who's probably going to run for governor. And one of the things that I read that he is a proponent of is if he is king, he is going to put a tax on fall applied nitrogen. So it will be more expensive to apply nitrogen in the fall than it is in the spring. And you can get indignant and you can throw a fit and you can say that'll never happen. And you can say that's not right. I'm not going to disagree with any of that. However, what I am going to say is if we don't police ourselves, the government will come in and police us. And never one time has government got involved in something and I said, man, that was a good deal. I'm really glad that they did that. If we will be judicious and not overuse nitrogen so that it runs away, it does 2 things. It keeps the government out of our business and it keeps money in our pocket. The overuse of nitrogen that ends up in the groundwater is an environmental issue. It is also an economic issue. Why do I want to let any nutrients go down the stream? In this day of limited funds and targeting money, I believe that the bioreactor that the tile water runs through at the end of the field is absolutely the wrong thing to do. Am I all for keeping the water clean? Yes, I am. But what I'm really for, why do I want to put a bunch of nitrogen fertilizer into a bunch of wood chips? Somebody please explain that to me in a way that I can understand it. Speak small, use little words, talk slowly, and help me. Because nitrogen applied to wood chips does nothing for yield. I have an idea. Let's put on the amount of nitrogen that we need. Maybe we try to figure out how to do it multiple applications so that it doesn't run off in the tile water and it actually goes into the corn and creates yield. It would appear, based on what we have read, that one of the number one causes of crown rot was the overuse of nitrogen. We create a lot of problems when we use too much in. And so the number one place that we're going to target funds is to say, yes, we need nitrogen. Yes, we want to get it right. Yes, we want to have top yields, but we want to have top economic yields. And using too much of any one nutrient is not the way to get it. I did find another article that I thought was interesting. And when we're talking about this way to conserve dollars and pay attention to what we do, there was an article that was talking about they have ways that they have proven to save soil and conserve nutrients. Now, to some degree, they're talking a lot about the edge of field practices, the riparian strips, if you will, where they come in and they put in a grass strip and it catches the runoff. Is that better than letting it get in the creek? Yeah. But again, why do I want to let it get away from me? I think one of the biggest things that we can do if we seriously want to save money is save our soil and save our nutrients. Erosion takes away topsoil, and erosion takes away nutrients. That phosphorus that gets broadcast out there that's left on top of the ground, and then we get big rains, and if we have worked that down and there's no cover crop and there's no residue there to hang on to that, it runs away. So what does that mean? Obviously, putting in the terraces is a good idea. Why? Because it controls water flow. And instead of that excess water running over the top and cutting ditches and taking soil and taking nutrients with it, every so often we stop it, we gather it up in a pipe, and we get it out of there, and it goes down to the creek and leaving behind a lot of nutrients and a lot of soil. What are other things that we can do to save money and save nutrients? Reduce tillage. Simply reduce tillage. And you say, well, you don't understand my area. Guys, I get it. You're growing 285 bushel, 310 bushel corn. You have a lot of residue. And you're going to have to figure out how to manage that. And I understand that, and you should. However, it's one thing to incorporate that residue into the soil. It's another to work the soil until it's nearly pure black and purely uncovered. You know, we had a friend from days gone by that he used a mini moldboard plow. And what he did was he would plow, but it would stand that soil up. And then instead of rolling it over, it would just fall down in a heap. And when he did that, he left 40 to 50% of the residue out there. What did that do? Well, number one, getting it incorporated into the soil made those nutrients recycle faster out of those corn stalks. Number two, by leaving all of that residue, it cut down on wind erosion. It cut down on water erosion. And number three, it was able to go back in the spring and work that one pass with the field cultivator and be able to plant. The less trips we're making, more than likely, the better off we are. Now, there are exceptions, and I understand there are things that we have to do. But I think that we need to be very realistic with ourselves. You guys know, I believe the 11th commandment is, thou shalt not kid thyself, or at least it should be. And we're kidding ourselves when we're working that soil till it's pure black. We're kidding ourselves when we till it until it's powder. We're kidding ourselves when we're letting it erode. I drive by fields down here close to us, and they're coming in the fall or in the spring with dozers and pushing in the ditches and farming through them and doing it again. I'm going to suggest that they're losing a lot of, because they're pushing topsoil into the ditch that's going to cut itself again, and it's going to go down the creek. That topsoil's got the nutrients, and that, folks, in my estimation, is probably counterproductive to targeting and conserving fertilizer dollars. Guys, we love what we do, and we are passionate about American agriculture, and we really want to see guys succeed. We believe that there is a better way to do things. We believe that perhaps the days of a high volume, dry broadcast, blow and go program have probably left. And when we start looking out as to how it is that we're going to do something better, we're going to do something different, it's going to involve soil testing. It's going to involve some cover crops and or some reduced tillage. It's maybe even going as far as no-till for those of you who can implement that and make it work. It's going to involve things like getting a Calmer corn head and chopping up those stalks so we can get faster recycling of the residue. There are a lot of things that we can do. I just want to share with you, we're going to do another 16 fundamentals of agronomy all the way across the United States. We have one program that is already completely sold out with a wait list, got 120 people registered and 25 people in the wait list. We have two other programs that are within just a couple of spots of being sold out. And I know that one of our programs that's coming out in Nebraska will fill up very, very quickly because I've talked to two people today and they personally know of at least 15 people that are going to register today and show up. If you're interested in attending one of those programs, we would encourage you to reach out. You can always send Karen a text at 641-919-5570. And most of all, we would really like to meet you at one of the upcoming Fundamentals of Agronomy. Guys, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for giving us a little bit of time out of your busy day. And as always, we hope you're having a better day.